So what is our approach? We use global security operations centers. We run 2 shifts in Singapore, 2 shifts in Barcelona, extended shift in the US. Allows us to have people that are highly skilled and qualified at all times. Allows us to do it in a cost-effective way. Singapore is about 40% less to run a security operations center than the US. Barcelona is about half the cost, just as kind of a quick number. Our rates of turnover in Singapore, less than 10%. Barcelona, about 12%. US, a little bit higher than that. So that's kind of the rates. And losing a person that you've trained up is painful because then you've got to go find somebody and bring them into your model and bring them into your experience. One of the things that we've done for the SOC of the future to keep people is if you have somebody that's staring at a screen all day, every day doing investigations, we found burnout's about 12 months. So you need to promote within 12 to 18 months to typically engineering level 2, engineering level 3, content developer, SIM engineer, endpoint, response person. So that's about the time frame that we see. 12 to 18 months is where you've got to typically promote somebody and give them something else to look at and something else to do. So just a bit of advice there. Log enrichment, big challenge for us. One of the things we did was we looked at a gap analysis for all of our customers. Because for us, we were afraid of a miss. A miss is, I didn't see that until it was too late. So we looked at what are all the different threat vectors. There's hundreds of different threat vectors. You can get lists from MITRE and others. Create it, and there's like, I don't know, 300 or 400 brute force attack, code injection, cross-site scripting, whatever it is. And then we mapped that to where do we see those? Perimeter, your core, your endpoint, or your cloud. And then we said, what do I have for security devices that control that? So I've got a perimeter-based firewall, intrusion detection, email gateway. I've got, web application firewall, all those types of things. And then from there, we said, where do we have the gaps? Where do I not have visibility? Where am I going to miss? And so we said, okay, if somebody doesn't have a web application firewall and he's got these applications exposed, they're vulnerable to an attack. If I don't get the data from that, I won't see it. If I don't get web server log data, then I may not see it until it propagates past that. And so understanding where you have gaps in your security for collecting logs to then fill your use cases is something we highly recommend so that you know where you can get hit and how long before you would actually see it. Because at the end of the day, the managers up here don't really care. All they want to know is you're protected. If we have a miss, if something happens, they don't want to say I didn't have visibility to it. They just want to know why not. The other thing that we highly recommend is all logs are not created equal. And so when you look at logs, you have to say, oh, I'm getting the firewall logs. Well, I'm just getting the inbound blocks and not the inbound allows. The outbound blocks and not the outbound allows, or reverse of that. So you have to look at getting a good, rich set of log data from the log sources themselves. And so that takes a little bit of looking. It takes a lot of investigating the actual log sources at the source itself. SOAR technology. SOAR technology is getting better, and it's getting better. We still see it's about 30% reduction in SOC analyst time if you implement it in the proper way. But you have to implement it completely, which means that you have to implement it so that you have the playbook on your types of investigations, on your type of use cases that help you to orchestrate the investigation. And then if you can automate the response, start slowly, and then turn up the volume. For us, response starting slowly was we created things to do what we call active defense, which allows us to, if I see an attacker scan the network, come back in and do a port probe or going out my higher level open ports, then we block them every time. Single block IP address, and you can do it by using an API or a web service subscription. But what it does is it lets the attackers know, and at least the perimeter, I'm watching and I'm reacting, and so you see the attack volume go down. One of the things you should also look at is what is my attack volume and where is it coming from and how do I address that? The other thing we recommend is not only just tactically looking at my compromises, but start to stack those up to look at what's causing those. What are the top 5 reasons I'm getting compromises on a monthly basis? Are my compromises going up in volume? Do I now have 35 a month and last month I had 30? Or are they going down? They're going down maybe because I'm looking at what's causing them and changing or remediating my controls. But look at the data. One of the things we did that's very helpful is we said we started to give those trend lines month over month, quarter over quarter, and then look at what's causing it, give them the drill down, which is actually business analytics for the security professional so that they can start to make those changes. We then said, hey, out of all of our customers, what's the trend line in your industry and your peers, and gave you the comparative analysis. So it's like, hey, I'm at 30 compromises a month. Is that really bad, or is it not too bad? So we can give you that analysis in real time on a screen. Machine learning. We do machine learning, have done machine learning. It was not very good 2 years ago. It's getting a lot better. You have to continuously tune and turn it. I mean, we were looking at things that were, giving us hundreds of indicators in machine learning, and 99% of them were false. But the one that we dug through was real interesting, because we didn't see it in any other way. And so what we had to do is start to correlate the events to reduce the false positives to other stuff, and then provide a workflow to do the investigation. Painful, expensive, and was something that wasn't good enough a couple years ago. It's getting better. There's some really good platforms out there. We use Pattern X, and Pattern X has a lot of machine learning models already built and developed that are available for the Minortack framework. So you can look at, I'm looking for email phishing. I'm looking for some user behavior. And then what are the logs that I need to get that from different sources? So they've got a lot of that already available, and we're using a lot of it. We create our own in the different engines. The other one that we use for some of our customers is Vectra AI, really nice platform as well. And so they're here as well, but that platform is really good, and it does a lot of the work that you would have to do on your own, tuning different things. So they're always getting it better and better, which is helping us to use that as just another indicator to then start and kick off the playbook to do the investigation. How many people are using AI? Cool. I would be willing to bet a year from now, 50% of the people will be raising their hand. And AI is an interesting term. A lot of it's just baselining, but a lot of it's also machine learning. Let me go. Next one. So I talked a little bit about Minortack frameworks. One of the things we've done in the last year, we used to use kill chain. We still use kill chain to evaluate our use cases. But now we're looking at more techniques and tactics, not just how does a threat propagate. We then had to realize, wow, it's not just about the use case, but it's also about how we do the investigation. As I said before, our investigation was focused on the compromise or the attack. Here's the alert, go. Now it's more focused on how do we get there? What are the techniques and tactics? And then the other thing we start to do is we start to look at what's the severity of the event. Is it exfiltration, or is it just somebody that's mapping or mining our LinkedIn profiles? And then where is the risk? What is the risk? In your incident response plan, you probably have a checklist of things that you're checking off. If you can automate your systems to actually put that information into some type of a ticket, where you push the ticket into your ticketing system so the responder can see, oh, this is a SEV 1, the risk is a 4 out of 5, it's at this location, and this is what I do about it, you're going to cut 50% out of their time to actually get a response and make their life a lot easier, so they're going to be willing to do that. We've seen it happen. It's very effective, and we're trying to do more and more of it. The other thing, the client would be just your information, but you need to know what's the impact of an event at an asset at this time. And then that helps you to prioritize what to do about it. And then look at the history. As you look at searching, create something that says, what can I look at on the history of the device, history of the zone, history of the attacker, so that I can say, hey, we were supposed to block this, we were supposed to change that, it didn't work, it wasn't effective, we got to go back to the well. And then look at how you can take a piece of information and correlate it to a bunch more information, either in the Splunk platform, outside of it, ingest other things within that, and create more advanced correlation rules. And then we always say you need to have a guide. You need to know where you're going and provide that actionable information to the responders themselves. And it might be that responder A is contain the threat at the firewall, block this IP address. Responder B is quarantine the device off the network, investigate the hash and the malware. Responder C is, put this back into service, notify someone. Responder D is, educate the user not to click on that. And so you're going to have a sequence of who responds, not just put it back into service, but stop it. Stop it from happening again. Makes your life a lot better, reduces the number of attacks you get, and your attack surface. These all sound like common sense things, but they're really hard to do. They're really hard to manage. It's what we do every day. So the other thing is developing use cases. We've developed use cases in 3 or 4 different ways, and we've kind of gotten as much as we can to this side, which is, what's the business reason that we're creating the use case? Is it something that we're trying to, prioritize over here that we're looking for? So we start to look at, the business side of why we're creating use cases. Then we start to look at who's going to attack me, who are the threat actors, and what are their techniques and tactics. And so we start to map how do we discover that in this business area with business context. Because what we want to look at is where we want to end up. We want to end up protecting the most relevant assets in the organization. We need to know what those are, so let's build that into the use case up front. The next thing is, where do we detect it, or where do we protect it? And then what is the data that's coming from that? Not just a log, but what's inside the log, and how do we publish that into a CIM or a data model to then get up into the use cases? So sounds easy, not as easy as possible. We created something called a hunting and detection engine that allowed us to model use cases around Minortack framework and threat models to be able to look at this information as we publish it into the use cases to detect threats, and then all the way to the playbook on how we investigate and ultimately respond. One of the things we also did that's been very effective is we enriched the data from all these different elements and we put it into an email. Because let's face it, hey, it's great to have a mobile device, it's great to have a workstation, but people respond to emails and they want the information in the email. Not everyone's going to have access in all your different operations groups to Splunk, or they're not going to get to Splunk, or they're not going to use Splunk. So pop it in an email, put it into your ticket inside of ServiceNow. If you format the email correctly, it can go into whatever your ticketing system is, but have the right data. Say, if I've got a checklist of, is this a critical device? Is it a privileged user? Is it in my data center? Is it in my manufacturing zone? Is it a SEV1? Put that data up front so somebody knows how fast they have to respond. Is my hair on fire? Or did I throw it at the help desk to remediate on Friday? Where's the zone? What is the link back to my search so that I can continue the search for the responder? And then, what is the recommendation on what I do about it? So as much as you can enrich the ticket, enrich the information in the email, again, you're cutting cycles and time and you're automating the process. So it's not just about what's in Splunk, but how do you get it to your operations teams to make it more effective? Automated response. Man, I'm telling you, so 5 years ago when we started doing this, the analyst said, Gartner said, you guys are crazy. No one's going to let you touch their firewall. No one's going to ever allow you to quarantine a device off the network. You are insane. And we're like, there's no other way. You get accuracy detection and business context, tell them what to do. They can't move fast enough. And here's the security guy going, I don't have any control. I've lost it all. I can just tell people. We're like, look, give some control back. So what we did is we created some automation, said, hey, we can create scripts into these APIs into the firewalls. I don't have to manage it, but I can just commit an IP address, single IP address. Never on this list of blocking, but just one. 30 days later, I'll come in and take it back out. So, at the end of the year, you don't have 1,000 block IP addresses in your firewall anyplace. It works like clockwork. So it basically can commit within a minute, and it doesn't interfere with anybody doing any firewall changes anyplace. And so our customers typically will have 10 to 15 of these blocks going on every single day. It's amazing how much it happens. So we block people that are attacking from the outside or devices that are compromised communicating on the outside. The next thing that happened was, our security manager said, hey, that's pretty cool. But there's some of those, use cases that are gray areas where I want to make a determination. It's not just automatically block. And so what we did with that was we said, hey, let's do a push the button. We'll send you an alert. You send us back an acknowledge and block. We push the button, blocks it. So it gave the security team control back over the firewalls again. They don't have to manage it. They don't have us managing. It's just block that IP address, please. We started to do other things. Hey, you know what? Quarantine that device off the network. So we can begin to do those types of things. And it actually works pretty cool. So we have some demos and stuff we can show you if you need. The next thing we did is we said, hey, the security manager needs something to do the analytics of what is security. So we started to build applications inside of Splunk, and we offer them through a cloud-based application to say, hey, let's categorize all of your attacks that are happening all the time and your compromises into attacks, compromises, policy violations, insider threat. And then let's look at the volume of those, the trends of those, when do they occur? Am I really just happening once a month or on Saturdays? What's causing that? And what are the use cases that are driving that? So I can effectively start to drill down the number of compromises that I have. Then we started to say, hey, you know what? We want our customers to respond, engage every alert, contain the threat so that this over here, I don't have to investigate 16 times in the next 3 days because nothing was done about it. So data is an amazing thing. When you start to give people data, they can start to react. They can start to react beyond just their operating group, and they can start to react with all the operating groups. So we followed a NIST model, and we said, hey, we will look at mean time to detect, which is on us as the SOC. Then mean time to acknowledge, which is basically still the SOC in many cases, where you have to say, okay, acknowledge, yes, this is a valid actionable item, and this is who's supposed to respond to it. So create the ticket to respond. The next is outside of our control typically, containment. You know, the firewall, the desktop, the end user, somebody else somewhere, server team, help desk, has got to do something for that containment. How long does it take them? I don't know. Did they engage it? I don't know. What is our target? I think I've got a target. It's an hour, it's 2 hours, whatever it is. The next is I got to recover. Bring the system back online, bring it back to the user, you know, the web server's back up. That's great, but how do I prevent that from happening again? I need to remediate it. So how long did it take me to detect, acknowledge, contain, resolve, remediate? Collect that information. Use that information. If you're working with us, we can help you to look at what are the industry standards, because we collect it for all of our customers. We do bidirectional integration with whatever their ticketing system is, and so we have some metrics on that. What does the SOC of the future actually look like? So I'm almost done. So we architect Splunk at the top, threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is internal threat intelligence, playbooks, external threat intelligence, operationalized so that you take the threat feed and you apply it to use cases. We also look at how to interact with other areas. One is you have to have a team dedicated to creating use cases in business context that look at the entire life cycle of an event on how you investigate it, how you respond to it. We also look at how do you respond to things. Look at SOAR platforms. If you have somebody that can really dig into it, they're very effective, about 30% reduction in cost of your analyst. And that's it. Any questions really quick?